And now, so we will first do this, a little bit of studying these shlokas. And if you want to look at them on the screen, that is also fine. Or if you want to just listen to me, that's also fine. So this is the chapter 6 of Gita, shloka 3 and shloka until 5, 6. So the first here it is said, Ararukshor muner yogam karma karanam uchyate yoga rudhasya tasyaiva shama karanam uchyate. For that sage who seeks to ascend to yoga, meaning to deeper contemplation, to deeper meditation, action is considered to be the means. Just as how all of us had to make effort to come in, even to log in online, to be present here. So the intention first we have to make. And then it says, for that person who has ascended to yoga, renunciation of action alone is said to be the mean. So the shama means like letting go, to be mentally trying to withdraw our senses from all objects. So this is what we do in meditation, right? We make that effort to sit for meditation with that posture, with that trying to put away all things outwardly. And then internally, we try to withdraw the mind to that state. And then it says, Yada hi nendriyarteshu na karmasvanusajjate sarva sankalpa sanyasi yoga rudhastadochyate. When a man is not attached to sense objects or to actions, having renounced all thoughts and intentions, then he is said to have attained yoga. So this is the process in our meditation, that mentally we try to withdraw from all sense objects or to anything that we want to do. And having renounced all that, we attain to that state of yoga. And this is the famous sloka, Uddharet atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva vyatmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmana. One should alleviate oneself by oneself. So our own beingness, our own consciousness is that source, is that medium which we latch on to, which uplifts us, which brings us down. But at the same time, through our egoic identification, we can pull ourselves down. Because our own self is our own friend, or it can be our own foe. So if we really connect to the deeper essence of our being, it can be a friend, or it can be our foe, our enemy. Bandhuratmanastasya yenatmanatmanna jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. The self is the friend of the self, or one who has conquered oneself by the self. Here the capital S denotes that pure self, that consciousness, that being. And that lowercase self is our ego, our false identification, our wrong identification. But for the unconquered self, which is our body identified, mind identified self, that self becomes the enemy, because the ego doesn't like the consciousness. So when we don't want to meditate, when we don't want to follow our inner calling, then that self becomes our enemy. Okay, so this is, we will go slowly in this, and you can, as I say each question, you can just kind of contemplate. Either you can listen, or with your, you can see, and then if you want, even write, whatever works for you. Is my mind cooperative and willing to sit for meditation? So this is a question that every time we have to ask ourselves. When we sit for meditation, the mind sometimes can rebel. The ego will come up with other things to do. I want to do this, I want to do that. So deeply, we should ask ourselves why and is the mind cooperative? And we should daily also make a plan. How much time can I regularly dedicate to meditation without feeling lost or overly restless? So we cannot overnight jump to meditating for hours, especially if we are beginners. Of course, if we are a little advanced, then we can try to push that a little bit. So, what is the balance for me? What is the right amount of time for one person may not be that same amount of time that one can sit for meditation for another person. So, what is a good amount of time? Of course, we have to stretch ourselves a little further. We have to we have to make an effort to push ourselves a little further every time. If I'm unable to meditate, can I use that time for selfless activities? So this is a way, to prepare ourselves, what we call as seva, doing something which is for the welfare of being. So that helps us to purify that mind which is filled with desires. So when we do some activities like that, some seva, some activities, the mind starts to become a little purer. And then that allows that person to experience that state of calmness. So some people who are not ready for meditation, or even those who do meditate, if we can do some amount of that, that will help us to use our time in that same direction. How can I balance my daily activities with meditation? Something that each of us should ask ourselves. My other activities of life and meditation. What is how can I make time? How can I take time for meditation? Because as we know, sometimes when we need something, we will make time. If we need food, we will make time for it. So similarly, this is the food for our inner being, our deeper being is seeking this food. How do I keep my activities in check to ensure that I don't compromise my meditation time? So sometimes, if we are not in a meditation mood, we will give excuses. We will look for things that is not critical or important, but yet mentally we will make it important. So we have to ask each of us ourselves, that we don't compromise our meditation time. If we have put a time, especially ideally in the morning or late evenings, if we have put certain time, then that time we have to exclusively make that time. So just to reflect on that. Okay, some inspiration words. A true teacher, spiritual teacher or teaching provides that personalized instruction based on the stage of the spiritual journey. So each one is guided accordingly, So sometimes we have to be careful when we look at something online and somebody says something which we're not ready for, or we may be a little more ready than what something else is saying. So actually, the traditional way is that you try to get personalized instructions. When one has calmed the mind and is free from restlessness and worldly thoughts, that person should cease all physical and mental efforts to enjoy the stillness of meditation. So somebody, what we call is who's not too rajasic. See, if somebody rajasic is that energy in us, that moment of guna, which keeps us constantly seeking activities. For such a person, it is not easy to sit quietly. So that person should engage the time in more seva, selfless activities, or doing their own job with the attitude of karma yoga. But for if you stay there only, then you will not progress. So for sometimes for such people, we have to make that effort to withdraw the mind deeply and make more and more effort to enjoy that stillness. And especially what we are doing, Mananam, it is a way to engage that restless mind into a productive thinking. So, see, the normal means of yoga is to just attain that stillness. But the Mananam uses our thoughts which are going outwards and directs them slowly to that inner reality, that inner beingness. Okay, a few more questions. Am I attuned to my conscience, my true friend and guide in my daily life? So this is as we all know from that first shloka of Bhagavad Gita, where we look at our conscience, that Sanjaya, that Sakshi, that witness, and we try to see where is our thoughts, where is our tendencies, where are they driving me to? Am I attuned to my conscience, my true friend and guide in my daily life? Do I adhere to my positive intentions and resolutions, or do I oppose this inner voice of guidance? So this is where, we have to ask ourselves, how do I respond to that inner voice? See, the more we learn to listen to that inner voice of conscience, which is, of course, the voice of the Guru, the voice of the Shastras, the scriptures, the one which is pulling us deeper inwardly. Do I rebel against well meaning people in my life akin to a rebellious teacher, a teenager? So, this is a tendency that we have to watch, because this is where the ego asserts that I don't want to follow this. Can I recognize that when I resist the guidance of teachers and scriptures, this resistance impedes my own spiritual progress? Am I aware of the ego's force at play in my life? Okay, so these are the questions that all of us can ask ourselves. Okay, we will just look at this inspiration and then we will use a few minutes to just contemplate on this further in a quiet way. When we attune to our true self, which embodies pure consciousness and bliss, our mind becomes positive and uplifted. Such a mind collaborates with our intelligence, fostering overall well being. However, when the mind is swayed by the senses, it pursues transient worldly pleasures and gratification. In doing so, it rebels against the intelligence attuned to consciousness, adhering to the adage, ignorance is bliss. Unfortunately, such a life path is fraught with suffering. Okay, so let us just take these thoughts and we can just, for a few minutes, just try to contemplate and try to see where is the right balance for me and how can I turn this restlessness, this rebellious, this ego-centered, ego dependent being and turn that inwardly to tune in to my higher being, my voice of conscience, my inner awareness, that witness. Which part of me is making that resistance? Which part of me is cooperating, willing to follow. So even now, as I sit in this quietness, am I aware of any forces that is rebelling, any forces that is not willing to cooperate? So we try to become aware of all these pulls, these energies that are all pulling different ways. So just simple practice, you can start being aware of the breath or repeating some quiet mantra and watching, being aware of that stillness in between the chanting or in between the breath. As the inspiration says, when we are tuned to our true self, our consciousness, it is that pure consciousness and bliss. Immediately our mind gets uplifted. So just being aware of this pure witness, that pure beingness. You don't really have to do anything to be in touch with that. That pure beingness is the essence of our own being. It's always there. Even when we go to sleep, that beingness is shining forth. And it is this awareness that makes us realize that we didn't die during our sleep, we were there. But in the daily activities, when the mind is operating, it goes into the background. So when the mind collaborates with our beingness, that is when the intelligence, that pure intelligence, shines forth. We can say the original intelligence, the real intelligence, not the artificial intelligence of mind and other products. So just for a few minutes, just repeatedly come back to your beingness, that awareness. Use the medium of the breath or the mantra to help you.